Deep in the heart of Calgary, the lives of 7 unlikely heroes with even more unlikely voices converge to change the history of storytelling forever. This ragtag team of misfits combine their love and passion for stories and smash it together with the vivid kaleidoscope that is animation. They are your neighbors, your friends, your family, maybe even that weird bearded guy you always see using funny voices to converse with the produce in the grocery store. This is their story, the tale of Blue Water Studios and the voice acting industry of Calgary. From origin stories to weird mouth noises, this is Voices of Calgary.
I got into voice acting because I was a weird child, and so my parents weren't sure what to do, I think, with my energy and my imagination, and I was really into acting like for myself with my stuffed toys in my bedroom, and so they got me an agent, and my first audition was actually for a cartoon series called Swift and the Little Circus. It was the first and only female character I have ever played, other than incidentals.
I was doing a Shakespeare production, and Scott Roberts, another voice actor, was directing it, and he told me about like how there's an actual like voiceover industry in Calgary, and I was like, how do I get into it? Tell me. And so I auditioned at the studio, talked to Brad, the engineer, and I was like, are there any workshops or anything like that that I can take?
I was in science class in the ninth grade. I was in the ninth grade. 7th grade? 9. Definitely grade 9. Definitely grade 9. Mrs. Fendelander's class. Like, my mom phoned me, and she's like, oh, sweetie, you got a part. And I'm like, oh my God, because I didn't sound like that. I sounded way cooler.
I remember, and on YouTube is a series called G Gundam, and it was my very first series and my very first character. And unlike some stage performers that can completely forget about their first couple of roles on stage, that's on video forever. And I can go back and watch what I was like at 21, the first time I ever played a character, and I'm terrible. I'm absolutely terrible. And I was nervous, and my palms were sweaty, just like Eminem, and my body was completely stiff.
I was 14 years old, and I got like whatever, I booked the audition, which you just call and you set it up at that point. And I was so nervous that my mouth, you know when you get nervous and your mouth just like drains of all saliva? It's like, and you're 14 years old, so you're also just like half-baked as a human. Half-cooked, not half-baked. You're not stoned as a human when you're 14. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that you're not ready. Anyway, point being, I was nervous. And my mouth was bone dry, and I'm sitting there like shaking like a leaf and just doing my very best. I think I did a voice that I called DJ Groove. At 14, I talked like this. Like that was my best. And then I was so nervous that after the whole thing ended, I just basically ran away. I left the building. I ran out to the car. I was leaving. They had to catch me in the parking lot, and they're like, "Where are you going? Where are you going?" It was this guy named Cam at the time. He's like, "Where are you going?" I was like, "Home." And he's like, we really like you. Just work on these things. Maybe don't be so nervous. And then 2 weeks later, I was in Zeta Gundam. 2 weeks later. And then no one believed me. When I was starting out, I would tell my friends, like, I do voices for anime and cartoons. No one believed me. They all made fun of me. Like, actually, it started a whole thing in my little friend group.
ADR, or dubbing, is what we do here. This is the same thing. And basically, when you're dubbing, you have a script that has someone who's gone through, they've rewritten the script to work in English, and then there's time codes. So someone has gone through and put a time code down for every time someone starts speaking. So we just go time code by time code for a certain actor. We have one actor in at a time generally, and we just do all that actor's lines in a row. We go to the time code. And at that point, you'll hear 3 beeps, and on the imaginary 4th beep, you know, if there was a 4th beep, that's where the actor starts talking.
A lot of fast-moving fingers, a lot of button pushing, a lot of slight edits and movements. When you're ready to take a take, you get ready, you hit the button, hits record, gets recorded. If it's good, you keep it. then you trim it, you drag it down to the track, and then yeah, you gotta take, and then you gotta move on to the next line, and it all happens within 5 seconds.
Well, you get the actor in there, you kind of give him a quick rundown on how things are going to go for the day, and then you just get started. And, myself, I like to let the actors give me the first read of each line, and then I work from there, and I direct them from there, because I want to give the actor a chance to do something that maybe I haven't thought of, and maybe it'll work better than what I want to do at the line. And then we just sort of work together to get something that sounds really good. Or if I don't feel the instinct that the actors brought is going to work within the scene, because I'm sort of the one that has got the most familiarity with the script, then I'll just push them in the direction I think they need to go.
Well, there's a lot of stuff you have to pay attention to when you're working with a voice actor, especially as an audio engineer, especially when it comes to what's coming through the microphone. The biggest thing is getting clean recordings. So that basically means no noises, no clothing stuff, no rustles, no blowing into the mic, that kind of stuff. You got to watch out for that pretty much constantly, because if anything's not clean, then you got to get rid of it, or it just doesn't make it to air.
So a typical session of voice acting looks like you walk into the booth alone and you put on your headphones and you kind of kibitz with the director, and you're like, "Hey guys, how you doing?" And they're like, "Oh, we're having a good day." And then you have a script, and you have a screen in front of you, and you have a microphone here, and it's blocking half your vision. So you have to read a script with your eyes, and look at a TV with one eye. You have your headphones on. And then they're like, "Okay, you ready, Lucas?" It's like, "Yeah, I'm totally ready. All right, here we go." And they're like, "Okay, so here's your line." And then you have 3 beeps, and then on the 4th beep, you start talking. After you do a take, it's silent in your head, and you can see the people behind the glass just kind of like whispering together, like talking, and you're like, cool, I wonder what they're saying.
I'm a strange person, and I think that helps a lot with creating characters. My whole life I was very introverted growing up. I was very shy, cripplingly shy. Actually, this is an embarrassing story. In grade 1, I was so shy that my mom was like, "Here, invite your classmates to your birthday." So she gave me all the invitations to hand out, and I was too shy, and I didn't hand any of them out, and I didn't tell my parents that I did that, and then my birthday came around, and nobody came, and everybody was like, "Oh, so." But basically, so because of that, I played alone a lot, and I came up with characters and voices, and even now I practice voices in the car, just conversations with myself. I'm like, "Oh, what's this guy doing over here? Blah blah blah." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna kick your ass!" And you just things like that, and I think that's helped somehow, because I have practice changing my voice and doing different things with it, and I just think a lot of people who aren't comfortable with voice acting, who have never done it before, that's one of the struggles that they go through, is because they haven't practiced it and they don't know how to practice it. They're like, "How do you get better at doing different voices?" And really, the answer is just do it. Just go for it.
And then I remember starting to shift into the boy roles, and I played this one character, Sai Saishi, of this G Gundam show, and he was kind of really hard and dark, and he went through a lot of turmoil, and you kind of just take a minute before you step in, and you're like, "I'm going into this world now." And the cloak goes on. And it's funny because in between takes, sometimes you're like, "Oh, how's your daughter? Oh, how's school going? Oh, what are you doing on the weekend?" But then the lines, you're just fully submersed in you're on that planet, or you're in that space, or you're going through that experience with the characters. So I feel like they live inside you. The characters that you voice are a part of you. That's how you nail an audition, is you really are channeling what you feel that character would be about and how they would live and express. So you just let them come out and play.
I think one of my favorite vocal warm-ups for myself, because I'll voice characters of all different ranges, is starting at the top of your range and then working your way down into other ones. So little boys versus little girls, there's very different types of reads, especially for a lot of the kids style animes. So the reads are very different. Little boys are entirely in anime, everything is hell yeah, hell yeah. So all your reads have to be really energetic and fist pump all the time.
So what I'll usually do is I'll start a little bit higher up in the range. So we'll start with a little girl. We'll sort of work our way down into a more mid-range. So we'll look at like 12, 14 years old, and then we can sort of work into a more grown-up, lower read. And then as I slowly warm into that register, we're going to drop down into like, add a little bit more rasp, right? Because a boy, you want to actually like give them a lot of gravel. And then sometimes there's younger boys too, right? So you're going to be like, I draw! So it just depends which character you're going for. But little boys, typically, I'll warm down into a bit of a lower range. And then I throw in a little bit of rasp. So you think like Nelson Muntz, right? Haley's it's a really bad Nelson Muntz. But here's the cool thing about impressions. The worse you are at impressions, the more you can use them to build voices for your own repertoire. So they'll be like, oh, I'm Homer Simpson. No, you're not. But that's a great voice, right? Like, it's a technique. It's a technique. You'll be like, can you do Cartman? I'm like, yeah, no, I can't, but now I have this voice, and so this is kind of fun. So the process.
Well, the actors, I mean, they're seeing those lines for the first time often. And they're, what's challenging is they don't necessarily know all the storylines. Their character, it's not really linear. Their character's not in every scene, in every line, in every show. So they're kind of jumping. Sometimes they might jump 5 or 10 pages in a script. They might not really know what's going on or what the other actors might do later. So that's a challenge. And as a director, you need to know what's going on so you can get the right read.
Flu season. Flu season for most people, not a big issue. As a voice actor, if you've just booked a part and then all of a sudden you lose your voice, kind of a big issue. You sort of want your voice to be on point, like on fleek all the time, so that if you get a call and someone's like, hey, can you come audition like in 20 minutes? That I'm not like full of mucus, like, or have a lost voice.
Working with people is the biggest challenge because people are inconsistent. You can have guidelines on what you're supposed to look out for, but people are going to do random stuff, and you just got to be able to deal with the chaos of human voice.
Most of my challenges are simply, as a performer, is getting the work. A lot of times as an actor, I don't care if it's film or stage or voice, if you were to define yourself by what you do the most, you'd consider yourself to be an auditioner, because that's what you do the most. Getting the parts, that's like the icing on the cake.
If you go to 5 auditions, if you book 1, congratulations, like that's a victory. And I think for a lot of people it'd be like, well, I didn't get this one and I didn't get this one. And I've certainly struggled with things where I'm like, am I doing a good job? Am I good? Am I doing a good job?
Sometimes actors forget to act. They just kind of read the line like they're reading a book. But yeah, redoing lines is, we do at least 3 or 4 takes per line, I would say, and it's pretty standard.
Am I doing this right? What is right in acting? I'm sorry to get sort of meta, but that's literally the game. You go into an audition, you don't know. You can't know if you're going to book it. You can feel good about it, but that doesn't mean that they're going to choose you. So basically, I've tried to, come to terms with that and just come up with the character beforehand, and then if it changes in the audition room, just let that be and basically move on to the next thing. And if you get it, if you book it, you're like, yes, cool. But otherwise, you've already moved on to the next thing, and you're not worried.
I think the biggest challenge was around not caring what other people think, because we limit ourselves a lot as human beings based on what other people tell us we're allowed to be or allowed to do. So being a female and a woman and always voicing these male characters who are strong characters, you know what I mean? Like all of the characters I played have been kind of like lead significant roles and often like winning battles and like fighting for the right thing. And so maybe that's influenced a little bit of how I live my life as a woman in the world, And so I think the biggest challenge is knowing that if it's something that you're passionate about, you have every right to do it.
When we're auditioning, this gets into the question of how to do a good audition. And what I like to say is when you go into an audition, no one's in there looking for you to fail. When we're auditioning for someone, we need someone to fill that role. So we're actually wanting you to succeed.
Basically what you're looking for is you bring in people that you feel probably have a voice that might work, who maybe they've maybe done characters in the past who are similar, or that you feel have a similar flavor. And then they come in with their instincts for the character. We direct them, and we try to get a really good audition from them. But basically, you get sort of a sampling of a few different actors. And then oftentimes, you'll send a short list to the clients, and they'll choose. Or sometimes the client will put it into our hands to choose.
We're looking for you to have made some choices, right? Here's how I would do this. And this gets to the whole idea of acting, right? Not just having a nice voice, but making choices. If you're going to play a crazy character, what's your crazy character? What's your crazy character? And that's going to be different from anyone else's crazy character.
We look for energy, and we look for people that are able to take direction, people who have, good acting instincts as well. Obviously, if you're a trained actor, you're coming in with some sort of a background that we can work off of. And then, it's really about how you are to work within the booth, how easy it is to sort of unlock yourself from the reads that you've prepared and try something that the director is pushing you toward.
We're looking for an authentic read. I've worked with people who are under the impression that it's just got to be about the crazy voices, or the really sound, deep. I just have to sound like a radio announcer. But if there's nothing behind it, if there's no intent, if there's no conviction behind it, then it's just a nice sounding voice.
It falls on the director to develop or help the actors to sort of develop new skills or get more comfortable in the booth. So really it's all about, as a director you have to get to know the people you're working with. And as a director you kind of have this toolkit that you can draw on. And it's all the stuff that you've built up over the years of working, and you sort of get to know the actor and go, I really think this sort of strategy is going to work with this actor. And you try that out, and you see how it works. And different situations call for different things. Sometimes you'll try something, and it'll work for certain parts of what you're working on, and then maybe the actor will respond better to something else. You try a different approach.
When you get into the real world, we're not looking for, did I make you happy? Well, yeah, but I want you to come up with a strong choice. And even if that strong choice isn't the right one, it's still a strong choice. And if you try just as hard to give me what you gave me, even though it was wrong, I'll respect that and I can work with that.
The relationship between a director and actor is very symbiotic. Essentially, the actor and the director, they're looking to get to the same goal. They're looking for the same end result. And what they want is to get the best take possible. And sometimes a director-actor relationship is parental in a way, in that it's guiding someone to the right path, and sometimes it's uncomfortable when an actor forgets that they're an actor, not a director, and that the director has to reiterate that they are a director. But usually it's very symbiotic, and the director will guide the voice actor into the perfect spot and almost make them believe that it was their idea.
If you dare tell people that you do voices for cartoons and video games, that's always my line. What do you do, Lucas? I do voices for cartoons and video games. The first thing, there's like 3 or 4 things that they say. And the first thing is like, oh, you in anything I would know? And the answer is invariably actually no. They mean like things that I would know is a very broad, popularity-based thing. So you have to respond, well, do you know anime?
Okay, do a voice then. I'm like, I'm a voice actor, do a voice. I'm doing it. And then people don't like that.
If you were to define yourself by what you do the most, you'd consider yourself to be an auditioner, because that's what you do the most. Getting the parts, that's like the icing on the cake.
Once you do something, it just goes away. And you don't know when it'll resurface. You don't get to know the production side of things. You just basically, you go in there and you do your job, and then you're like, I hope that is released one day because I would like to at least like see it. And so maybe 50 years from now, I'll be like, that was me. I remember that. I remember that day so well. It was such a lovely day in the studio.
And I think a lot of people believe that anyone can do it. And I think with the correct training, anyone can do it. But you have to know what you're doing to do it well.
I think the biggest misconception is we're doing the best we can, and I never want to take away from what the original is. I'm just wanting to produce, maybe contribute to a version that more people can access, and then if that bigs up the show and there's more fans who are excited about Buddy Fight or excited about a show, I feel like then that's contributing in a good way.
There's more than one Reddit page entitled Subs Not Dubs. I'll say that much.
They think it's done in like Los Angeles or Vancouver or Toronto, somewhere else in general, but the fact that it exists in Calgary is like mind-blowing. They don't know that that exists.
I think what keeps you going in voice work is that it's super fun and it's like a magical place because you're literally going into that world.
Knowing that this script was developed like in Japan or something like that, and there's this whole world behind it already, and you're just adding your own take to it. Like, you know, you're not the painter, you're a color. You're like, oh, we need the color blue for this. So they're like, okay, I can be blue. And then, you know, you add that to the whole picture. And then people are like, I hate dubs. I hate dubs. I hate this person.
And then I think one of the other really cool things about voice acting is that it is non-discriminatory. It can be really liberating. You go, and so I'm like, today, I'm a 12-year-old girl. Next week, I'm a 10-year-old boy. The week after that, space dragon. Week after that, flying robot. And so it's like you really get to like extend yourself and move into all these different little niches.
That creativity and that joy you get when you are creative, when we tell a story and you get that reaction, right? Especially when you weren't looking for it in the first place. A laugh, an interpretation, something. Yeah, that's it. That's why you do it.
I voiced male characters, and it actually created a lot of turmoil in my life. I was cast as young Goku when I was a young girl going through puberty as a woman, and it created kind of an identity crisis in that the kids at my school were brutal to me about it. I was teased a lot about it, really ridiculed things like, Zoe has a penis, Zoe wants to be a boy, and when you're like going through puberty anyway, it's kind of just like this really intense time, and so to have these, I guess, like bullying, attacks happening, I had this weird identity crisis about like my sexuality. I remember being like, do I want to be a boy? Like, what does this mean? Like, what are these limitations people are putting on me? Because I just saw Goku as this amazing character. Like, he was badass, he was fighting bad guys, he always fought for the underdog, he was like on adventures, he could fly. To me, he just like represented everything that was awesome, and I didn't see him as like a gendered character of like boys can do this and girls can't. And so when the series of Dragon Ball ended, then we went into GT, and there was actually a point where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore, I don't want to be associated with this, because I was super embarrassed, and the booth was like an escape. I like lived at the studio. But I feel like when I came back into the real world, I felt like wrong for it. So when that series wrapped up, I actually stopped voice acting and I went traveling. I moved and I lived in Ireland for quite a few years, and my parents would get calls like, when's Zoe back in Canada? We want her to audition. When's she coming back? But you have to be living here for a while, right? And I just was kind of taking a hiatus. And then I came back and started university, and I got a call from Brad at the studio, who was literally like a big brother to me because I spent so much time with him while I was growing up. And he was just like, when are you coming back for an audition? Like, what is happening? And so I came back and I auditioned, and I landed a spot on a series right away. And now it's like one of the best parts of my life, and I'm super proud of it. And now when people find out about the Goku thing, they celebrate it. So I feel like it was just like a interesting journey, and I'm super blessed to still be doing it.
I think it's time to start my tail fishing now. Good, huh?
So in my life, I got really, really sick for a really long time. And I had to have a bunch of surgeries. Like, so starting from the summer of grade 10, so I think, what is that? That makes you like 15 years old or something like that. I got something called ulcerative colitis, and it's when your immune system attacks your large intestine. So you start to basically just get really sick and you're bleeding and you're getting tired and you don't know what's going on. So that stuck with me for about 7 years, starting from when I was like ballpark 14, 15 years old. During that time, it was really hard to work at other jobs. And doing voice work was part-time enough and it was friendly enough that I could keep up with it, you know? So I remember going to the studio wearing like my sweatpants, you know, and just being like super sick, and I couldn't do anything else. I could hardly like leave the house, you know, but I could go to the studio and I can do voice work. And I think it's one of those things that it sticks with you. And now being like 31 years old, you can look back and go, man, I got really sick for a long time, and the only thing that I could do was voices. I'd be sitting kind of like in the basement of my parents' house, just being really unwell, and all I have is voices. And so when you don't have terribly too many friends, like, because you kind of like close off, I think when you have a chronic illness, so just looking online and making friendships with a community online. And that's profound, because you don't necessarily have that, I think. And I was really lucky to have this experience. So I start talking to people online, and it's really validating. I'm like, people like what I'm doing, and people like me. And I don't know, I can pour energy into this because like I got nothing else going for me. And so you get a response, and I think that keeps you going. Like, I want to try harder. I want to do more. I want to pour more energy into this because this is like the most important thing in my life. And maybe it goes too far. Like maybe it became too much a part of who I was, and I need to kind of distance myself from that. And that's also a different conversation. But I kept going with voice acting because it was all I had, and then it's also the best job in the world. So it's like addicting, right? It's almost it's my own little drug of choice for a long time.
Find the Maverick base, destroy their defenses, take out the Maverick, and return with the stolen parts. Should take no time at all.
0.
First and foremost, it's energy, because every director would prefer someone coming in with a bit more energy and have to pull them back, because if you're constantly pushing energy, it's a bit like pushing a rock up a hill, and you're constantly trying to drive that energy, and it gets very tiring.
I think there is a tremendous amount to be gained from taking workshops, because I have seen some phenomenally talented theater actors get in the studio, stand in front of a microphone, and forget everything they ever knew about acting, because the microphone is shockingly terrifying if you've never been in front of it. It's an entirely different set of techniques. I know if you're coming from theater, you're used to using your whole body to convey emotion. Whereas when you're in front of the microphone, it's a very sort of intimate experience. It's very different. So you have to convey those big, huge emotions with just your voice.
Don't do impressions.
I can kind of do a pretty decent Elmo. It's okay though, but I mean...
Because I hear that a lot. People will be like, oh, I really want to get into it. Listen to all these people I can sound like. And like, that's dope, but you need to be able to do your own unique thing. The thing that will land you a role is that you have a voice nobody else has.
Be skilled with your voice. Do tongue twisters. Learn how to breathe. Learn how to scream. If you want to do Japanese anime.
Practice your craft. Practice hard. Practice more. That's about it.
The answer is just do it. Just go for it. Talk to yourself in the shower. We all do it, in our heads at least. But when you're in the shower, just like sing and do weird voices and come up with like arguments between two characters in your head and just go for it.
Confidence. No, it's confidence. The big challenge is confidence. People always get so nervous when they're recording. People always like, you get up in your head, especially if someone doesn't like something that came from your heart. Because voice acting comes from within, comes straight from like your soul out your mouth, right? That's how I feel about it. And so if someone doesn't like it, it feels like they're judging you specifically. And I think that's performance in the creative arts in general. But to remain like subjective about yourself and kind of at peace with people not liking maybe your first take, that's probably one of the biggest things that everyone's going to come up against is like, hey, it's good. You're still good. Believe in yourself. Have confidence. That's the challenge.
Yeah. Do those things. Do those things. Do the advice that I gave. Yes.
What will become of our unlikely heroes? Will the Calgary voice community finally establish the largest empire since the British? Perhaps even Roger Rhodes will step down from his almighty throne and show these puny heroes how a real story is told. Find out next week on Voices of Calgary.